All right, guys, let's go ahead and get ready to kick this back off. We'd like to thank Justin from Patch My PC for doing an awesome presentation and demo. And without further ado, we're going to have Donna Ryan introducing WIM Witch 2.0.
Hello, everybody. I'm really excited to be here and to be able to share the work I've been putting in on WIM Witch. For those that don't know about this utility, it's been a passion project of mine that I started back early July of last year. When I started the project, the longest script I had written was about 40 lines, and right now I'm at about 4,500. So I've got a lot of time, a lot of time invested in this, and pretty proud of how it's turned out. One of the biggest, most requested features that I've had with WIM Witch has been integration with Config Manager, and I've been working very hard in the last few months to make that happen. And I'm really excited to actually be able to share this new functionality. But we'll start right off right at the beginning, asking a basic question of what is offline image servicing? Well, it's a process that allows you to modify the Windows WIM file, which essentially contains all of the files, folder structure, and binaries that are going to be used to actually write windows to the hard drive during imaging. And it's commonly done to support applying software updates, but there's a lot of things that you can do with it as well. You have the inbox apps or the AppX packages that come in with Windows. Those can get stripped out. You can apply features on demands, language packs. There's a variety of other packages that you can apply. There's like your local experience packs as an example, which were introduced, I believe, in 1809. You can apply XML files kind of specifically around default application association, start menu, layout. You can modify its registry. You can simply copy files and folders over to it. It's a very, very powerful process, and it can absolutely negate the need for your legacy build and capture. The only thing that build and capture that brings to the table that offline image servicing doesn't is installation of Win32 apps. So if you do have a need for that, then that's not going to be applicable to offline image servicing. But most everything that you're doing can be done through this process. So really, it is an optional step in your OSD process, but it really is highly recommended. So why would we want to do this? Well, it's going to put in less steps into your task sequence. If you're going to try and put in .NET 3.5 as an example into your task sequence, there's at least one step, maybe two, depending on how you're going about to solve that problem. You may have a start menu layout applying or default app association. The less steps you have in a task sequence is the less steps that you have that could potentially fail. What's also really nice is you don't need to patch the operating system because it's patched before it's ever laid down. So that's going to decrease the time it takes to turn around and build a machine. From a content distribution standpoint, you can remove bloat. So you're going to potentially remove your unwanted indexes out of your WIM file. And those could be things, if you're deploying enterprise, you don't need edu or edun or pro or any of those other ones. You're only going to put into there what you need. So you've got very good control over it. And I think you get a better end user experience is if you're applying your updates ahead of time. Once that machine, that the task sequence is done running and a user tries to get to it, they're not going to get hit with, this month's patching because it was done before the machine was ever came online. There are solutions out there to perform this functionality. Config Manager has native functionality. OSD Builder is probably the most widely known offline image servicing utility, and there's WIM Witch. There's plenty other just PowerShell script ones, but to compare, WIM Witch to Config Man and OSD Builder. From a raw feature standpoint, OSD Builder still has a few more than WIM Witch. But looking at this to compare the three, only Config Manager and WIM Witch provide a GUI. OSD Builder is pure PowerShell and pure command line. If that doesn't bother you, more power to you, because OSD Builder is a fantastic utility. But Config Manager more or less stops at updates and index removal, whereas OSD Builder and WIM Witch can handle your .NET 3.5 packages, language packs, features on demand. Currently, WIM Witch is the only one that can handle retrieving the Autopilot profile JSON file for doing Autopilot for existing devices. We'll both do Apex packages. We're both open source. You just go and download the scripts from the gallery. If you do have a need for multi-indexed WIMs, that's OSD Builder still has its beat on that. You do have with enabling Windows features has been a request that is on my whiteboard to do. I've built into WIM Witch in version 5 the ability to string in PowerShell scripts. So if you know like the features or any customizations that you want to do to your image that WIM Witch doesn't natively support, if you can put it in a PowerShell script, WIM Witch can execute it. So at least there is some of that extensibility, which is pretty awesome. And then, of course, there's Config Manager integration, which Config Manager has, but WIM Witch now does too. So this list is not intended to be, a complete soup to nuts list. There's still plenty of other, small, features and things that OSD Builder can do. But the thing to remember here is that from a functional standpoint for you and your organization, if any one of these solutions meet your needs, fantastic. I don't think that one is really better than the other, so long as you are applying your updates to your WIM and making those customizations that you need. And so it's for me, it's not so much a competition as it's just putting a good tool out there to make sure that it's offline image servicing is fully accessible to everybody. So outside of that little checklist, some other things that WIM Witch handles, you can save and load configurations. So once you have a WIM build essentially constructed, you can load that. You can take those loaded file or save files and then call them from command line. So you can orchestrate and do your image building just by firing off, a single command line. It can also handle multiple save files. So you could have, if you've got a Windows Server 2019 and a 2016 and a Win 10 1809 and a 1909 that you need to update monthly, WIM Witch can handle all of them. It'll just process them all in serial. What's also handy is she'll check and update the PowerShell modules that she's dependent on and also update herself. So once it's installed, it more or less will take care of itself and prompt you if it needs to do anything. You can also inject drivers. It's not a super common scenario in OSD, but on an occasion you may need that. Can update the OneDrive consumer agent that comes in with Windows, which is pretty nice. It's one of those, those kind of annoying things that if you don't update that once the user logs in, Windows will, flag them, hey, this is out of date. You need to go download the new one. So having that OneDrive agent updated is it's nice for the end user, so they're not getting errors and warnings. She also does support Windows Server 2019 and 2016 LTSC. Currently not supporting the current branch releases. If there's enough demand, I suppose I could build that in, but most of the clamoring was for LTSC support, so I built that. And just as a small thing to note, there's kind of been a misconception of what WIM Witch is and what it isn't. The misconception is that WIM Witch is just a front end to OSD Builder, and that is not the case. I am using a component that Dave wrote called OSD Update and OSD Sus, which is really the update mechanism for checking the catalog and downloading updates. that's all I'm really using. Dave was actually really nice enough to spin that off of OSD Builder, so that those two modules are freely available to anybody. And if you wanted to, start playing around with, trying to make your own solution or playing with updates, OSD Sauce is actually a fantastic little module for getting updates. Everything else more or less is my code. Of course, this is a community solution, so I did borrow some code from here and there. The biggest contributor was Michael Nystrom. I just took his logging functionality from one of his hydration kits. There's a little bit of code in there from Dave Segura, and Nikolai Anderson also helped me with some of the config manager integration. So it's not just me, it's a community effort, like most of the other community tools, but most everything in there is mine. And where am I going with WIM Witch after V2? Well, some of the requested features are having native support for applying default app association, start menu, and modifying registry keys, enabling Windows features. I may get to those at some point. I'm kind of hot and heavy still on the config manager integration. Currently, there is no console specific integration like a right-click tool, but that is definitely going to be coming. Currently, I'm only supporting the OS images, not the upgrade packages natively. That's not to say that you couldn't take the resultant WIM file and modify your update package or upgrade package with that, but that should be relatively straightforward to do. It's just a matter of time. Multi-index WIMs is on the list, as well as having an output to ISO. And I've tried blogging and trying to keep the documentation up to date on WIM Witch. So I've got was that 1, 2, 3, 4 major blog posts on SC config, which is where you can find a link to the PowerShell gallery that has that. The line at the bottom, the save script, is my preferred method to install because of how WIM Witch sets up its folder structure. If you just do a straight install dash script, I don't like where it puts in the default path, and since it's then going to build its own folder structure and you're importing WIMs. If you do save script, it lets you just download the script, and then you can walk through the installer and have it go to where you want it to go. And with that, it's demo time. Any questions on anything before I hop into demos? No? Okay. So again, this is version 2. I have not released this out to the PowerShell gallery yet. I don't have the documentation written, and there's still a couple of things that I want to work through. I ended up forking this back in January, so I still need to merge some code from version 1.5.3. For those that are currently running WIM Witch, you'll notice that once this is started, it didn't bother to do, well, of course, ISE crashed as ISE tends to do. But you may notice that it's not checking for the OSD sus and OSD update modules anymore. It just goes right into WIM Witch. And we will cover that. So to start off, if you're brand new to WIM Witch, we'll go ahead and walk through the process of getting this put together. So the first thing you're going to want to do is get some WIMs for WIM Witch to modify. So what we can do is on the import WIM in .NET, we can tell it that I want to import and install WIM and .NET 3.5 binaries. Why these are on the same tab is because the install WIM and the .NET binaries come from the same ISO. So what I can do is I can go ahead and browse to an ISO, and I'm going to take 1909, and I'm going to go ahead and give this a new name. And I'm going to hit import. Now what she's going to do in the background is actually mount the ISO without a drive letter, and then copy the files out and organize them. With .NET and a lot of the components that you use in servicing really need to, they're really version specific. So WIM Witch will also catalog all of this under the OS type and the OS version. So Windows 10, Server 2016, Server 2019, and the version numbers to make sure that when you're doing the build, you're getting the correct package. So just that easy, and I've imported those. As a side note, if you run into errors trying to import from ISO, this is one bug I have not been able to squish. I think if there's some policy or security setting that doesn't like ISOs being mounted without drive letters, if you do run into that scenario, what you can do is go to your WIM Witch installation folder and you go into imports. What you can do with .NET is make a folder for your version of Windows 10. If this is for Server 2016, that would actually be 1607. 2019 is 1809. They actually share, both Win 10 and Server share the same .NET binary, so no harm, no foul there. And then all you need to do is copy over the 2 cabs that have NetFX in there from a WIM file. You can throw it into here, just copy or install WIM right in there and rename it. Every file from there is, relatively bug-free. If you do happen to find a bug, ping me on Twitter. You can DM me, email me, whatever. I'm really receptive to suggestions and comments and bug fixes and that kind of fun stuff. If you do have the need to do language packs and features on demand, WIM Witch can import those. At this time, there's not a lot of logic and a lot of safety checks to this. So what this is going to ask you, it's going to ask you for what type of payload you're going to import, for what operating system and what version. And what we can do is, this part actually is not importing from an ISO, it is importing it from a folder level. So what we'll want to do is actually go ahead and mount your ISO. We're doing language packs, and I'm going to do 64. So I'm going to hit there. And then what this is going to do is scan the folder contents, and I can say, I want this, I want those. Doink. And it'll populate that list. Let me get the little PowerShell window up here so we can see that it's doing things. And I can hit import. And it's going to bring those in. And so now we don't have to worry about trying to make separate packages in config man to run those on the fly. We can bake those right into the image. You can do the same thing with local experience packs and the features on demand as well. This is also, an optional step. If you don't need those, all you really need to get started is you need a WIM file. From a basic perspective, the other thing you're going to want to do is get an update catalog. So for those that have been using WIM Witch for a while now, you'll notice that this drop down is new. So what I can do is I can tell it, we can use OSD sus, which is the same process it's going to do today. And if I do click on OSD sus, it's going to check the payload, or the installed modules, like it used to do, in the current release. Just to show you I have nothing up my sleeve, we can see that those modules are not installed, but I don't need to use OSD sus. I'm going to go ahead and use config manager. So she'll check to see, what the site code and what the FQDN of the SMS provider we're connecting into. At this point, to get config manager functionality, you need to be installed on your SMS provider, because I'm directly working with WMI. I do plan on investigating the API. Hopefully we can break this off of the primary site server, but for right now, that's how it works. If you want to download your updates ahead of time with config manager, you can. If you're using OSD sus, it's mandatory that you download your updates ahead of time. So if we want to do them ahead of time, we can go ahead and say we're going to do Windows 10 and we're going to do 1909. Now I went ahead and did this ahead of time, so I'm not downloading the latest cumulative update. But you can hit download, and it's going to go through and check what it already has in its store, check to see if it's superseded. If there's a superseded update, it'll delete it. If there's an empty folder, it'll get rid of it. And then it will also download the latest OneDrive agent for you. Again, with if you're using OSD sus as your update source, this is mandatory because it cannot download those updates on the fly during the build process. However, with using Configuration Manager as your update source, it absolutely can. Once we have some of our content imported, we can then tell it what we actually want to do to this WIM file. So let's say I want to inject some language packs. Well, I can hit the checkbox there. And oh, I know what I need to do here. I need to actually tell WIM Witch which my base image I'm working with. WIM Witch doesn't build an image and then update that individual image over and over again. It builds from new each time. And the advantage to that is I don't have to worry about cleaning up the old WIM conflicts. Just starting from scratch each time is, for me, is easier and more reliable. So that's kind of the process. So what I'm going to do is I'll take a Scug demo 1909, which I imported earlier. And then what this is going to do is going to go ahead and pull the list of all the indexes that are within that WIM file. And I'm going to tell it that I want to use Windows 10 Enterprise, and I can hit OK. So it's going to do, it's going to go ahead and import that info, populate some lists. And so you can get some of that, zoom in here. So you can see, which edition you have, what your architecture is, build number, that kind of good stuff. We've done the update catalog. So for customizations, now I want to pick a language pack. So what this is going to do is source not found, import some language packs. I thought I just did language packs. Let's see, did it not import? Windows 10 language. Oh, I see what it did. Wait, yeah, it should be in language packs. Okay, well, it looks like I found a bug in version 2. What this should do is then pull that list into here and allow you to select which language packs you want. Same process too for the local experience packs or the features on demand. For the sake of expediency, I'm going to leave those off. Plus, I haven't imported those either. But these all perfectly function just fine on the current version that's out in the wild right now. If we want to inject .NET 3.5, once we have it imported, all we need to do is hit inject. WIM Witch is going to check to see which version of Windows is mounted and then pull the appropriate version from its catalog. So there's nothing else you need to do to it. Just import it once and then hit your inject. If we want to apply patches, enable the updates. If we want to apply the OneDrive agent, we can do that as well. For removing apps, if we want to yank our AppX packages, we're going to throw a checkbox in there to tell it that we want to do this process, and we can hit select. And again, what a lot of this logic is based off of is the source WIM. So WIM Witch now knows what our build is going to be based off of, so it can pull in the appropriate list of AppX packages because each version has a slightly different list. So I can go ahead and hit select, and these are all of the AppX packages that are come baked into Windows. So I'll go ahead and get rid of those 3. So there's that. If I didn't want to do anything with Config Manager, what I would need to next do is to provide the name for this image. So we could call this, and we could provide a local path for this. And that's how that works today. Actually, with WIM Witch currently, this field, the path field is not directly accessible. You have to use this selection. However, the problem I found with this particular WPF.NET call is it doesn't allow you to access UNCs, which you need to for Config Manager. So just as a cheesy workaround, you can go ahead and directly modify the text. If you are going to use Config Manager update source and you want it to check for updates while running, check the checkbox. Just that simple. So for Config Manager, what can we do? Well, we've got essentially 2 options here. We can do a new image or we can update an existing. So with the new image option, what we can do is we can go ahead and give the image a name, and we're going to call this Hello World 1909. The image version and descriptions, those are the same fields as in here. So even though you have version and OS version, this is more of your internal version, where this is build number that's scraped out of the properties of your WIM file, as well as the comments. So your comment is the same, essentially the same field as the description. So you can populate those if you want to. If you wanted to enable binary differential replication, throw a checkbox in. Your site code and FQDN for your site server already pre-populated. You can also choose if you want to distribute this content to distribution points or distribution point groups. So if I want to do DPs, I can go ahead and select that and hit add. It'll pull in the list of your distribution points from that you have in the config man environment. I'm going to go ahead and select that one. And then what we'll need to do is also put in the path to our image share. So let me just go ahead and give that some dummy data. Well, no, because I'm going to move on to the next one. So if we wanted to update, and to me, this is the really cool one. So if we go to update an existing image, you can go to select image. And what that's going to do is query config manager to find the existing images that you have in configuration manager. So let's say I want to go ahead and I'm going to take this guy, which is based off the build code. This is an unpatched 1909. I'm going to select that. And what this is going to do is then populate the distribution points that are on here, the build number, the name of the image, and as well as it will populate the name of the file itself and its path. So you don't have to go and copy the path out each time. That's all known information in config manager, so it's relatively straightforward to scrape it out. But at this point, we are good to go to update. Some of the other things you can do. This is the feature set that are released in 1.5. If you needed to make some customization to the mounted WIM, let's say you wanted to make a folder and throw a file in there and have that just as part of your base WIM, you can pause the build either after the mount, and so nothing has been customized yet, so you can go in and poke around inside the mount path and see what you're working with. You can also pause it after or before dismounting. So the reason why I put it in before and after is if you're doing something that is dependent on updates being applied. One of those classic ones is language packs. Is if you apply your updates and you apply language packs, then those language packs need to be updated and you'll have to reapply your updates. So in case you need to work around with that, those give you those options. If you want to run a script, we can go ahead and browse and look for a PS1 file. We can then pass all the command line parameters to it if need be. And we also have some drop-down options is that we can run the script after the image is mounted, before the image is dismounted, which reflects the same two options before, and on build completion. So if you wanted to orchestrate this image getting copied and imported, let's say like MDT, if you wanted to write a little script to handle that, your file name is going to be known, your image name is going to be known, the destination where the output of that is going to go. So you could go and then have it run that script and take your completed WIM and then go do something else with it in the environment. I'm going to turn that off because I'm not going to use that. Drivers are no great shakes. This is just browse to a path that contains your drivers, and it just recursively adds them in. The autopilot feature. This is actually one of my favorite features in here as well. So if you're familiar with the autopilot for existing devices deployment mechanism or enrollment mechanism for the autopilot, what it does is you can take a JSON file that contains all of the required information that a machine needs in order to join an Azure Intune tenant. So once you have those profiles created in Azure, what you need to do is retrieve that JSON file. So Mr. Michael Niehaus has been kind enough to write some PowerShell modules that can do that. But if you don't want to go through the process of downloading them and figuring out the syntax and cleaning up the file, you can just grab WIM Witch. So what you can do here is give it a path that you want to save the file to and hit retrieve profile. And then WIM Witch is going to check to make sure all of its dependent packages are there. So we're going to need the Azure AD module. And that's going to install. And then it should then move to the Windows Autopilot Intune module and then start installing that. And I suppose I should have clicked this ahead of time because watching modules install isn't necessarily the most exciting of things. Once this is complete, we should be able to go in here and then make our connection. Unless it squawks that it needs to be updated still, and then it'll force me to close WIM Witch. Well, while that's baking, to save and load files in this tab, and of course the console is locked up. To save files within the Save and Load tab, there is a field to give it a name. Oh, okay. No, I'm just going to tell it no. Oh boy, it didn't like that, did it? Okay. So looks like I got another bug here to clean up. And then there she is. All right, so now what it'll do is it'll go ahead and prompt you to make your connection and give you the list of all the profiles that your Autopilot profiles. So I'll go ahead and grab my hybrid and hit OK. Doop, and it downloaded it. And now if I want to actually inject this into the WIM file, and the reason why you do this, if you're familiar with how an unattended XML file works, the JSON file conceptually works the same way. There's a known path that Ubi will look for to see if this JSON file exists. If an unattended file XML exists as well, it will choose the unattended XML file. So the task sequence that runs this image is very basic, but you have to have a step in there to delete the unattended XML file. If you didn't want to use WIM Witch, what you would need to do is build a package or have a file share or some way to get that file into that known path once the image has been applied. WIM Witch just makes the process a little bit easier, so you don't have to build a package and you don't have to manually get the modules. So if we want to go ahead and put that in, we can hit the checkbox to enable, and then we can go ahead and browse to our JSON file. It'll pull in the name, the tenant name, your ZTID. So at this point, everything that this machine is going to need to know in order to connect to the cloud and join your tenant, it now has it. I'm going to turn that off because I really don't want to roll that out, but it's really just that simple. And as far as saving and loading, we can do something along the lines of, well, probably won't like the special character. So I can do save, and it saved that, and I can, just to show there's nothing up my sleeve, I can go ahead and load. Yeah, because I didn't have anything selected. That error makes sense. So since it crashed on me before, I need to go ahead and redo some of this here. So I'm going to go ahead and take my 1909 base WIM. And again, I'm going to go ahead and select my enterprise SKU. I'm going to tell it to use Configuration Manager as my update source. Oh, for those two that have used WIM Witch, what this new list box does, instead of having those really ugly and stupid looking random spaced big blobs of text that tell you that you need to restart PowerShell or something's out of date, this all now is all self-contained in a list box. It's just making, cleaning up and polishing the UI a little bit. Customizations, I'm going to go ahead and inject .NET. I'm going to update the OneDrive client. I'm going to enable updates. App removal, I'm going to go ahead and steal a handful of apps to get rid of. Okay. And then I'm also going to update an existing image. So again, I'm going to take number 7, which is already distributed, and I'm going to update this. Oh, and at this point, we're ready to make it so. Now, for the sake of expediency, I am going to get rid of an update. I'm going to get rid of the cumulative update because it's going to take about 10 minutes to apply. So this will speed up the demo greatly, but I'm also not going to hit this checkbox because when it checks on the fly, it's going to go, oh, hey, you're missing your cumulative update, and re-download and apply it. So, but this button totally does work. So at this point, I think we're ready to make it so. So what we can see she's doing here, actually, let me clean this up a little bit. So what WIM Witch does is it does have a logging functionality, but I also have it outputting to console. I've tried getting something that was nice and inside the console, but my scripting skills aren't that great, so I haven't mastered how to do multi-threading and get the console to not freeze up all the time. So I'm still relying on the console. I could also have it call like CM trace, because this is building a live log as this runs. Where is it pulling this from? Is it it's copying it back down from the UNC. That's why that's. Oh no. That seems to be taking a little bit while. Oh, there it goes. Just impatient. Oh no, it's because it zoomed it. It's doing a freeze there. So what this has done so far, though, is it's pulled out the indexes we didn't want, and we can see that Windows 10 Enterprise is one we kept, and it said it's skipping it. So right now, at this point, the image is getting mounted, which takes a couple of minutes. And it's going to go through the list and see everything that I've told it to do. So the first thing it's going to do is to try to do the language packs, the features on demand, and local experience packs to make sure that they're installed before it does the updates. And so she's just going to go chug along right now. It went ahead and pulled the correct .NET 3.5 payload and is applying that. And I'm just going to just kind of chug and do its thing. Any questions so far while this is running?
There were a couple in the chat here, Donna.
Okay.
Let's see. John Tracy had one, says, are there drawbacks to installing multiple language packs on the same WIM?
Just size. As far as I've found, if you can go the approach of having a multi-indexed WIM, so you could have a single WIM file with index 1 to be English US, the second one can be Spanish, French, whatever, and have those. But you can put multiple WIMs on, or multiple language packs in there. The nice thing is that all those language packs will be available. So if you're going to have multiple users or multiple languages being used on a computer, it does make it handy.
Okay. Let's see. Jason has one that says, what about removing optional features like Quick Assist?
So the optional features at this point, I don't have native control. If you know the syntax to how to do that with PowerShell, you could go ahead and write a little script and then tie that in, and then you could have it remove those, but no current native functionality to do that.
Okay. Let's see. Jason also says the option to create package share for use in WinPE would be nice to have.
Okay. Currently not supporting Windows PE. That is on the board at some point, but I really don't have any Windows PE support, but I will keep that in mind. Absolutely.
Cool. Lots of great feedback. John, I see your last comment there says you have an executive order that you must install all language packs on all PCs. That's a little scary. That's a lot of language packs, isn't it?
Sure is.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, I think that's all the questions I see. Definitely, if anybody has any more, please throw them in the chat there.
Absolutely. So where our status is right now, oops, wrong button. There we go. So where we're at right now, we're now dismounting. We can see that .NET was injected. It skipped the JSON, skipped the drivers. And we'll notice too that the servicing stack update was the first update to get applied. That's crucial because, as was mentioned in the roundtable, your servicing stack update actually updates Windows Update, and sometimes you have updates that are dependent on a servicing stack update. Currently, Config Manager does not do servicing stack update first. OSD Builder and WIM Witch do. They did put that functionality into Technical Preview 2002.2. So that should be coming to prod for those that just need to have a vanilla servicing. But just for, just as an FYI. And so yeah, it's in the process of dismounting. The updates have been applied. We copied over the OneDrive setup. You may notice that there's a little bit of talk on there about ACLs. I ended up finding that the ACLs didn't allow you to copy the new file over, so I had to modify those in order to copy it and then reset it, which resetting it probably wasn't required, but I figured, do no harm. So that's what it's talking about with the ACLs. Apex packages have been removed. So we can see as well, because we did not apply the cumulative update, the build number is still going to be the same, 418. That's not a surprise. Had we applied the latest, it would be whatever the latest build is. But this is a nice little way just to validate that updates have been applied. So now it's exporting the WIM file. And what that's going to do is there's a DISM command called DISM/cleanup image. That is more or less the same function. If you start dorking around with this, you'll find in PowerShell that there is some PowerShell command that has that same name or similar to cleaning up the WIM, but that's really for like I want to say it's like a Windows 8 or a Windows 8 RT. It has some really esoteric use case that, well, clearly nobody's using. So what the export does is, it shrinks it down by about 500 meg and copies it out. So what this step here is, when we're working with config-man, is it's exporting it to the your package source. Also, what this does too, when you update a WIM file in Config Manager, it will back up the old file with a timestamp name or a timestamp appended on the name, so in case something bad happens, you need to revert back. What was your latest backup version? Currently, I'm not purging old backups, which I probably need to do because as the months go by, that's a lot of space being eaten up.
One other question for you, Donna.
Sure.
If running this on an existing WIM, is .NET 3.5 ignored if it already exists?
If you're running an existing, it's already applied. I don't know. I don't know if you already know it's there, you could not check the .NET 3.5. My guess is that DISM would probably either bark and say that it couldn't apply the payload and would continue. I don't think it would break anything. I'm not currently doing any detection because I'm assuming you're starting with a new WIM.
Okay.
So
let's see. Brian asks, is it still best practice or needed to service a WIM on the same OS version and build? So I think he's saying whatever system you're running these on should be the same as whatever you're trying to service.
No, not at all. No, I'm running this on Server 2019 and I just serviced a Windows 10 image.
Okay.
So, we can see here, that we have our new image. It's been exported. It's updated the properties and config manager. It's updating the distribution points, refreshing properties of the WIM, turning off binary differential replication because I didn't have it checked, updating and copying the log file over. So now what we should see, if we refresh this, and we pulled 7, which I should have had. There it is. Hello World demo. And so you can see that was there. It was there. Now in my testing, I've found that this part takes a little. The distribution actually takes a little bit to kick off. No, that was Windows Update. Did I have Distribution Manager in here somewhere? No, that's WSync and DMP Downloader. Let's see. Oh. And let's see, yeah, so it's starting to distribute. I'm not sure if my packages, what is that, 15? And that's 15. So yeah, well, like a lot of things with config manager, there's not necessarily instant gratification on this, but hey, it distributed it without me having to do it. So yeah, it works. Pretty stoked. Any other questions, comments, observations?
Really neat tool, Donna, really neat tool.
Thank you. Thank you. Oh, you know what I can do too? I can cover the command line functionality real quick. Command line functionality. I haven't integrated the config manager component in there yet. I'm probably not going to release version 2 for at least probably another week. I don't have the documentation there yet. I just need to button some stuff up. But from a command line perspective, and let's see if I can zoom in on this. And this, I probably can't type while I'm doing that, can I? No, but I can do that. All right. So if we want to do any of the command line functionality, we can tell it to do auto. And that tells WIM Witch that she's going to automatic mode, don't load the GUI. Your next option is Autofile or Autopath. Autofile, you're going to select a single file. If you do Autopath, you're going to point it to a folder. And what you'll want to do is copy multiple builds or saves into that folder. So if you want to do a Win 10, 1909, and 1809, your 2016, and your 2019s, you can throw them all in one folder and point WIM Witch at it. I'll do Autofile, and then we can configs. And hey, there's hello world. Oops, crap. That's not what I wanted to do. Yeah, all right, cool, that's fine. All right, and then we have some other options. So if we wanted to update PowerShell modules, we can. If we wanted to download updates, we can. Now, the reason why, if you're using OSD sus as your update source, why you can't have it run and check updates at the same time is because if your module is out of date, it has to be uninstalled and reinstalled. And when you go through that process, if your PowerShell window is still open, it doesn't fully remove the old module until you fully close PowerShell. So I can't fully close PowerShell and then have it spawn PowerShell again. So in this case for command line, you'd really want to do like a WIM Witch, update PowerShell modules and run that as a scheduled task to run prior to a second scheduled task to do all your downloading updates. But we can tell it, yeah, I'm going to download updates. And then I can tell it, how do I move over with this? There it goes. It's going, right? Yeah. All right, so what updates do I want to get? Well, I'm going to go ahead and select Windows 10, and I'm going to go ahead and do 1909. I can only select one of these options, and I don't have an option to have multiple parameters, so it's either one or all. I can also tell it that I want to update server 2016 or server 2019. But those are all the options that you can put together with this. So I still need to put in the logic to handle the new dropdown for the update source, because this is going to assume that you're using OSD sus, and 2 is not going to understand this yet. But that totally works. Again, on 153, you can do that today. So you've got all of that kind of functionality. Now, how do I get back out of this? Like that. Okay. Anything else?
Let's see. I don't see any other questions right now. Anybody else has anything? Throw it in the chat here real quick.
Just wanted to confirm here, Donna. This is a community tool, or is it monetized, or what?
Nope. I am making absolutely $0. You can download it directly from from the PowerShell gallery. Code's open. You want to fork it, copy it, slice it and dice it. It's a community tool.
Great. Thank you, Donna.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I think this is great, Donna. I remember, I think it was your chat from last MMS where a bunch of people talked together, and you were mentioning, and you mentioned at the beginning here as well, right? You kind of had a problem, and then you learned PowerShell basically to solve that problem, which is great. I think that's a great way to get in, and because when we follow things in a book and don't really have anything to apply them to, but when you have a target, it certainly I think helps out a lot. Just some technical questions. What are you using to build your GUI? Are you using like a scripting thing or WPF or what?
I am using Visual Studio and having it output it to XAML, and then I am parsing the XAML file from within my script. Okay, so it's nice. WPF.
We should probably do a session on that sometime too. So we might bug you for that later, as well as I think I've talked to you a little bit on some of your IoT or home security things maybe you've been doing. If you think that might be an interesting thing to share sometime, but I'm curious on that at least. I think that would be an interesting side session.
Yeah, once I can put WIM Witch down, because I've been more or less grinding on config man integration since January. So I had those like 3 weeks where I got to play with my home automation. Then it's like, all right, yeah, back to work.
Back to work. Good. Okay, wonderful. Yeah, lots of great comments. People happy seeing the live demo and all those things. So yeah, we really appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Yeah, excellent demo.
Thank you.